Adventure Ho Illumineers, and welcome back to another episode of the Ducktail Dads. I'm one of your hosts, Nathaniel, joined by Mac. Unfortunately, not able to get Ryan on tonight due to some technical difficulties, but that's just something you deal with. So we're going to forge ahead as best we can without one of our star contributors. But yeah, I think, this is another thing that you're trying to balance, right, is figuring out how your internet works in your house. I actually was doing it recently as well with my mesh network. How fun. But let's start off, as we usually do, talk a little bit about how we're balancing Lorcana with our lives. So we'll start with what is new in your world. Mac, kick us off.
Well, yeah, what's new in my world is basketball refereeing. For those of you who don't know, basketball is a winter sport, especially in the months starting in December, primarily in the months January and February. It's crazy busy with basketball season for high school sports specifically. And with that, I have been a referee for this is my third year now doing high school basketball. So it's something that is near and dear to my heart. When we talk a lot about our competitive itch and our competitive upbringing with traditional sports, basketball was one of those for me. So it's fun getting back on the hardwood, running up and down the court, trying to keep up with these really fast and athletic high schoolers. But it's a lot of fun being a part of the game again. And especially since it is the heart of the schedule, it's the middle of conference play. So if you don't know what that is, in high school, usually based on region, high schools are kind of put into a conference together. And then once you get into conference play, those games tend to be a little bit more competitive. Schools have a little bit more rivalries between each other, so it makes the action a lot more fun and intense. So for me, it's a lot more fun as well to see that intensity come out and be a part of the game. So I had one this past weekend. I do one night a week, roughly speaking, from now until probably early March. And it's been a lot of fun. But this is another activity that I do. And speaking about balancing Lorcana and just our personal lives, this is just one thing to add on top of that within my life. But I'm happy to do it because it's something that I really like to do. It's also been really cold this week in Minnesota, and also, again, this upcoming week, we usually get these really, really cold parts of the year, probably 1 or 2 weeks a year. It gets really cold, like under zero, and even for Minnesotans, it's still frigid. And so trying to balance getting our kids outside and enjoying the fresh air, but realizing that they don't regulate their body heat as much as adults do, so keeping them safe inside when they need to be. But all in all, it's been a really good week. We also attended a set champs. Me, you, Ryan, and then our Scrooge McDuck himself, Connor. We're all at a set champs at a casual store. We've been to this store before, and it's usually a fun, casual set champs season, or so we thought. Nathaniel, I want you to talk a little bit about the competition, but from our past experience, we were thinking that this is just going to be fun. We all are pretty good players, so maybe one of us will win. But we don't have to go as intense, and this presents an opportunity to try some decks that we might have been testing, and I was one of those. As much as I've been talking about my Sapphire Steel list, I kind of surprised you guys pivoting to an Amber Sapphire Detectives list, something that I first noticed at DLC Richmond. There was one on stream, and ever since I watched that deck, it kind of caught my eye. It suited my playstyle, and I tested it all throughout last week and was like, let's give it a run. This is the set champs to do it. I had a lot of fun. Ultimately, I went 2-2, did not make top cut, but I was just there for the vibes at that point because it was a brand new deck to me. But overall, a very good week for me. No complaints. Got to play Lorcana. Got to do a lot of things outside of Lorcana too. But now I'm excited for you, Nathaniel. What's new in your world?
Yeah, so I'll start with the non-Lorcana first. As it's been very cold out, we've had to take a little step back from our usual sledding adventures. So we've been doing a little bit more indoor stuff. My kids have discovered the joy of Mario Kart. And wow. Let me tell you, as a parent, it is really fun to see them enjoy it and also show them just how good you are at that particular game. I think anybody who's played like Super Smash Bros, Mario, it's like there is no letting up on that particular game. I will go as fast as I can and show them the meaning of haste. Shadowfax. Sorry, that's a note to any Lord of the Rings fans out there. On a Lorcana front, I think to Mac's point, like this particular store is we like it. It's the midpoint for a lot of our friend group, so it's kind of the easiest central spot for us to attend. It is actually the closest store to my house, albeit I still have to travel not like a good distance to get there, but it's got some casual vibes. There's a pretty good community there, and that's, really just trying to have fun with Lorcana, and it is a little bit less intense than other places. I think, on this note of like other types of decks that you might see, right? Like there's not as much of the like, I think it's called net decking, right? Like people are running fun stuff sometimes here too, like puppies decks or, big giant Mickey, try to get him out with like Ruby Steel Challenger stuff, so just like other types of decks. And there's certainly like plenty of really good competitive decks that you'll see there, but it's just I think a wider array that you'll see, which I think is fun. This is also the store that we did our Infinity event at, which was at a limited number of stores. So again, closest store to my house. So I was very happy to be able to go there for the Infinity weekend and play some old cards again a few weeks ago. The actual event, we were surprised because there were more people there, I think, than usual that didn't usually frequent the store, that were also very good players. So it felt like a very competitive field when we got in. And much like Mac, I had brought a deck that I just said, hey, I won a set champs last weekend with Ruby Amethyst. I'm just going to try something a little different and we'll see what happens. And I had basically thrown a ton of different potential decks out there as things I might want to try. I was thinking about like using the participation Daisy ducks that I got and building some sort of Sapphire deck, or maybe I would do the purple green show me more hyper aggro and just like slam cards down really fast and just have fun with that. But ultimately what I landed on was I wanted to try this Amber Amethyst deck that I've been seeing kind of crop up a little bit. And I personally do not feel like I have the mental concentration to build an infinite combo play. So I decided to go with what I call the no TK list, where it's just a lot of good purple cards and some pretty good amber cards layered on top of it. And I brought that to the set champs. I think on the note of kind of what Max said about just like focusing on having fun, in the second round, I played a Blue Steel Detectives list that was very fine-tuned for these detectives, even having some things like One Last Hope. So these hero detectives could even challenge readied characters, and they got evasive on that person's turn, and they got resist +2 from the Big Judy Hop, so they just got like all the things. And I played a 33-minute game that was like neither me nor my opponent was playing particularly slow. It was just lots of trading, lots of cards in the discard pile, quest at your own peril, or for me, I can't quest because it doesn't matter if I quest or not. I'm probably going to get blown up by these mean detectives. It was just really cool. So that was a fun list. And one of my other opponents actually ran a blurple list that it was actually not like your typical blurple. It was like all Frozen themed, or for the most part Frozen centric. So tons of Anna Elsa stuff, and Anna Elsa like synergies. That was really fun just to see those cards. And it reminded me of a video that we talked about on this season of the podcast about just like leaning more into certain themes. So whether it be like ally builds or detective type builds, but also like franchise builds, like can we see more support there? That was really cool just to see like a deck, and it wasn't purely that, like there was still like Demona and stuff in there, which she is not part of the Frozen world. But it was still really cool to see so many of those cards that had like pure synergy from a franchise. So I did ultimately win the set champs. So I do need to call out, because there was an episode a couple months ago where I believe we discussed our flexibility in being able to play different types of decks, Mac. And I believe you gave me like a score of 3 out of 10, if I'm not mistaken. But I seem to recall that in this particular set, I've run 4 different ink combinations and it had some decent success. So I
I
don't
think
know.
you took that rating to heart, man. Speaking of bringing out our competitive spirit, as soon as you heard that, you were like, I gotta show him and just try a new deck every time I go out now. What the heck?
Yeah, I will say, it's yes, it's different, but also I did 4 events if you include the weekly event that I went to right on the eve of set champ season, and they all had one common ink color in them, and that is Amethyst. So Amethyst Steel one weekend on the weekly where I was able to win that event, and then the set champs went Blurple, Ruby Amethyst, and then now Amber Amethyst. So always purple, which kind of showcases, I think, again, the strength and potentially this looming purple elephant in the room that's not Madam Mim or Dumbo. Sorry, dad joke. But I think it does showcase in some ways, right? Like the power level of Amethyst right now is very strong, and you can kind of do similar stuff with different companion colors, and just it sort of tweaks a little bit about what the deck is trying to do. So I think might be fun before we kind of get into all the great stuff that came out from the Lorecast, just talking through this Amber Amethyst list a little bit more, because it's kind of been one of the surprise lists, I think, that we haven't really seen historically have success. And I think it got popularized this set when a particularly strong player, Zan Syed, ran this one turn combo play where it's an infinite lore loop where if you set up these pieces on that turn, if whether you're at 0 or you're at 19, once that's all set up, you will win the game, because you will gain 20 lore in one turn, or however many you need to get to 20. You can do that all in that one turn. So this list is not quite that, but it's really centered around a couple cards. So there's kind of the core cards in here that you're going to see in a lot of Amber lists, and that is Elsa, Genie, Dumbo, Cheshire Cat. Like those are the real like core staples of this. And then I'd also argue that like Hades and Demona are also pretty much a standard in most all Amethyst builds right now. I just went with 4 and 4. I wanted tons of card draw. I wanted to like lean fully into like card advantage as part of this deck build. And then you're going to notice in this top row, there's 3. The Royal Guard was a really interesting card for me, because with having all of this card draw, this character can start to get like kind of ridiculously strong. So like on a Demona turn, at worst, when you draw for turn, do your stuff, play the Demona, this becomes a 5/2, and it's a 1-cost character. So like that's absurdly good in terms of like the trade ability of that card. And if you did some extra, like you crack a guidebook or something after the Demona, now he's a 7/2, and it's a 1-cost character. So it just like kind of gets crazy. And with Demona exerting their characters, right, you're going to be able to make some really positive trade. The Elanwi is basically just Amber Basil. So I've seen a very similar deck list that I kind of based this off of that was called like Blurple but yellow. And so it's kind of trying to do Blurple-ish stuff, but it's with Amber instead of Sapphire as the companion ink for the Amethyst. So Elanwi's acting as that. It's the support character. So like when you play your Elsa, you could like quest with it, give Elsa the extra strength so she becomes a 4/5 that's exerting something and rushing. The really important, the Yago's really cool. It's a Challenger 5 that's absurd for a 2-cost character, and it really helps lock down the board. But the Mowgli here is a really interesting card. And when this came out, I think there was a little bit of hype over it, because it kind of felt like a Bare Necessities on a body, but instead of you choosing the non-character, your opponent chooses the non-character. So this can be important in Sapphire matchups where you play this on the play. You play it on turn 2 and you try to take away their Sail the Azurite Sea if they had that in 6 characters. So they miss out on their ramp. Or you can wait a little bit longer in matches where maybe you're playing Baja, the Sapphire, Emerald build. That would be focusing on the board wipe combination with a big Prince Philip and Malicious Mean and Scary. You try to wait, maybe you play this the turn that you think they're about to do that combo, and now they kind of lose their biggest out, and that could help you win a game. It's probably one of the only ways you beat that with this deck, because it's not particularly fast at questing. It's a bit more of a control deck. So not usually my style as more of a mid-range or a little bit more aggressive player. But the other card I think that's really interesting about this as we kind of move down, and it's these ones. So I included a one of Monstro purely to just make people's spines tingle a little bit when they saw that I had yellow and purple in my list and they saw that there was a Monstro. Is he running the combo or not, right? Because I think that's the first thing you probably think when you see those two inks, is there's a chance that this is running this one-turn combination play. But the MVP really of this deck, and you see kind of with the Genie, the Iago, the Elsa, and the Ursula being kind of your stretch lore option. Once the game has gone on long enough, you boost this Vanessa, she can quest for 3. That's kind of a lot. And she's evasive, so it's hard for people to challenge into her. But the MVP of this is really that you're going to lean into is you're going to try to win the evasive war. And that is with this particular card here, the Horseman Strikes. And it's, you get to draw a card and banish a chosen character with evasives. Anytime your opponent would play a Dumbo or a Genie, you can just instantly banish it, replace it with drawing a card, and you can really start to create these board disparities as far as the evasives go. And I think that's particularly strong in an Amethyst meta when evasives seem to kind of rule the roost. They never come back as just an interesting card that can tend to target the Vanish characters, or if you're kind of racing your opponent, you can use this to just freeze 2 guys and quest away on your own. And then the last couple here, the World's Greatest Criminal Mind. I think this is really a fun card when you have Elanwi online, because you can quest with her and give your opponent extra strength and then play World's Greatest Criminal Mind to banish that character. So you could like pump up a Calhoun to a 5/2 and then sing this to get rid of it. Or just hardcast this to get rid of it because it's freezing the board. So that's kind of like an interesting little card. It helps to clear out opposing Demonas because she is a 5/6, right? So it just kind of is a clean removal for that, knowing that she's a very popular card as well. The Junior Woodchuck Guidebook doesn't need much. It's a card advantage card through and through. Modern day Friends on the Other Side, right? And then Lantern, which is why the kind of joking name for this is like Blurple but yellow, because this basically, in conjunction with your Inkwell, makes it so you can get characters out earlier by exerting this, and it's repeatable, so it kind of acts as like an extra ink for just the cost of 2 ink. So you're kind of getting to do blurple-y things without running the blurple ink combination. So where I think it lacks, from if you're just comparing it straight up to blurple, is it lacks some of the top end stuff that blurple can do with like the Sapphire Hades being just like one of the great premier instant removals of a threat, whether it's readied or not. But what it does do is it focuses more on banishing because of the things like Horseman Strikes, versus blurple tending to into the unknown, or Hades will put something in an Inkwell. So in that particular matchup, this can tend to be a good one for you because you're banishing their stuff and they're adding ink to your Inkwell, and then this deck can kind of capitalize on getting the extra ink because you still have all this card draw to sort of replace those things that might be getting put into your Inkwell. I didn't build this to target anything in particular. I just thought, hey, it looks kind of fun. It's a card advantage deck. I think Amethyst is really popular, and I think in an Amethyst meta, Amber Amethyst might do really well. And it did. I played that kind of Frozen-themed blue-purple list in round 1. I played Purple Steel in round 4. And then in the semifinals and the finals, I played Blurple both times. One of them being Ryan, which, it's like we talk about the bittersweet part of like playing your buddies. It's tough when you play them in a win-in. I think Mac had mentioned that last week, right? Like we don't want to be knocking our friends out if we can avoid it. Like maybe you just avoid it as long as possible. And ultimately that's when I ended up running into one of our friends, was the semifinals. But yeah, it had some good matchups, I think, into Amethyst. So that it ended up doing really, really well. And you just draw so many cards, which I thought was kind of fun. And it's kind of learning for me, because when I first started playing this game, right, like I think I had mentioned on an earlier pod, it was like, well, you can keep drawing all those cards. I'll just like get to 20 lore and win the game over here. But this is like a little bit more of a drawn out game, right? Because you're just sort of gradually sort of leaning into the Amethyst identity of gradual advantage sort of incrementally throughout the match through drawing more cards and putting down more threats and making positive trades.
Yeah, what's interesting about this list, Nathaniel, is when, in historically speaking, when you see Amber and Amethyst together, you tend to think hyper aggro. And this is not that. It is very much just stall, and then slap a lot of characters on the board all at once in conjunction with the lantern, and then you just turn them all sideways and that's how you win the game. I know observing the semifinals match between you and Ryan, that's what it felt like. And I know I made the comment like, wow, this is really a Blurple killer, because you can withstand the punches that Blurple can give you, and then eventually you can just take it over, because to your point about the Horseman strikes, you can get rid of those evasives, and Blurple can't really establish the board, because in addition to that, it also has that ultimate board, kind of quasi board wipe in the Demona, because you force everyone to exert, and then you can start challenging into people. If you have a Cheshire Cat, then you can kind of heal your characters as a result of that. So really your board state doesn't change, whereas your opponent's does. But as you've been talking to this, I ran Amber Sapphire Detectives. And as we're looking through this list, my list in my deck kind of wanted to do the same thing. I think at the end of the day, I would ramp with my Sapphire cards, where you had 75% Amethyst cards. I think 75% of my deck were Sapphire cards, and then the Amber cards kind of filled in. The main difference with mine was I had the big Surfer Stitch, was kind of the big my draw engine drop as I ramped up with my characters. I also included Horseman Strikes. Whereas you had 2 copies, I included 4 copies of the song, the 5 strength song Banish one, World's
Greatest Criminal Mind. Yep.
Yeah. And what was nice about mine is you talked about support and supporting your opponent. My deck included 2 of the 1-drop Basils, kind of like your Elanwi, but also it fed into the 2-drop Chicha, which also had support. So I had more support options to then give it to my opponent, and then I could banish through that World's Greatest Criminal Mind combo. So like our decks kind of function the same way. I think the biggest difference, obviously, is yours was the card draw. Like you had more card draw with the Amethyst and the evasive package, with Dumbo doing Dumbo things. I had access to Hades, you had access to the other Hades and Cheshire Cat. So like there was some ebbs and flows there. Ultimately, I just went in there having fun. I think you did too, and you definitely got the payoff for it. But I got the payoff for it too, in just the sense of I told you at the store, like feeling reinvigorated with the game. Like I felt like I was getting burned out testing the same deck for the last 4 weeks, and just picking up a new deck and trying it out within the course of 4 or 5 days. It's funny because we've alluded to don't do that the week of set champs, but both of us did happen to do that this set champ season. But I think we both had a lot of fun with that. It's sad though. Shout out Ryan, because you alluded to the friendly fire between the 4 of us. Ryan played all 3 of us throughout the course of the weekend. He's my opening match, Ryan and I got paired up, and he beat me with this Blurple deck. Very good, obviously very good player and a very good deck. And then ultimately his round 3, he played against Scrooge, Connor, on Connor's Sapphire Emerald. He took down Connor. And then ultimately he matched up against you in the semifinals, and I think Ryan was the 1 seed, right? And you were the 4 seed. I guess I don't know how that was paired, but you two ultimately got paired up in the semifinals, and he couldn't go for 3 for 3, unfortunately. But talk about like friendly fire. Ryan had to go through all of it in just a single set champs, which is statistically very unlikely, but so kind of feels bad for him in that sense.
Yeah, he was the 3 seed, I was the 2 seed. So we, not that it really matters, right? You still roll. It just so happened that like with the way that the points had shaken out, we got paired up. So yeah, it's never fun to have to do that, where it's like, one of you gets to go on, but then someone's knocked out. I think one thing I'll say though about this deck is it does also kind of function like Blurple, in the sense that like the matches are going to be longer, so like try to be relatively quick about like your decision making where possible. The nice thing about when you get into the top cut though is usually it's untimed rounds, so then you can kind of take a little bit more time to do that. Yeah, I loved how it performed, other than that earlier round draw, because that one game just took so incredibly long. It functioned very well, and I think this could be a fun one as you're kind of looking into your final weekend of set champs. If you think there's going to be a lot of Amethyst, try out something like this, right? There's tons of stuff online. As far as, I usually use Dreamborn as my first place to check for deck lists, but it was fun to try something different, and I just happened to also have some pretty good success, and I got some good variants, I think, in terms of like what I matched into as well. So that always helps a little bit too. But hey, now that we kind of have talked a little bit about our weekend experience from a set champs perspective, today was a big day. So we are recording on Tuesday, January 20th, and today was the Lorecast. And there was a lot of really cool and very exciting stuff, both for Winterspell and for future sets after that. So as we know, Pixar is coming to Lorcana in just a few months. Oh my goodness, cheers galore. But they even talked and gave a little bit of like hinty, spoilery stuff about the next few quarters of the year 2026. So there's a ton to look forward to this year. I think the first one that we can get into here is around some of the card reveals. So they've only released about, I think it's like 10 cards, Mac. In particular, that they've shared so far with everyone. A couple of the ones that are really interesting to me, I think, is this 1-cost steel Gantu. And so the flavor text here is the text is easy target. When you play this character, choose and discard a card. But he is a 1-cost 3/3. So like, yes, there's a drawback to playing this, but it seems kind of like a card that would be pretty good in like a dock deck where you're like gonna be burning out your hand anyways just to get to a dock. Or if you have 2 in hand, you could play this and just discard one of your docks that you would have discarded probably anyways. Or it could maybe be a card where if you're playing a more aggressive deck, you get to stick an early body on the draw earlier because you have the 1 card advantage from being on the draw, so you get to play this big character and not feel the pain of discarding it. That other card is bad because now you have this 3/3 body and it's only turn 1. The other one that's really interesting, and I actually thought about this combo too, that I saw somebody post online, is this one of the themes for this, right? Like when you look at the artwork for oh my gosh, Winterspell, it's like Stitch is a cover kind of character, and Angel, one of the other aliens. So it's aliens are kind of one of the big character types that seem to be pretty prevalent in this thus far from what we've seen. And one of those is actually an amber card called Ruben, the Sandwich Expert. And you can exert him and remove up to 2 damage from chosen character of yours. For each 1 damage removed this way, you pay 1 ink less for the next character that you play this turn. So the card that I thought of actually right away when I saw this was, because I played Ruby Amethyst this set, I thought about that injured Mulan and how you could play that. Like, you could play that on 1, play this on 2, and play Shift Mulan on turn 3, because you'd be removing 2 damage and you'd have 3 ink, and she's a Shift 5. So you would be able to play her on turn 3. And then because you shifted her, she becomes a 5 strength character. If they exert in front of this Ruben and the injured Mulan, you would be able to deal 5 damage to 3 characters. So basically a board wipe on turn 3, which is like, talk about like a way to establish like very early board risk or kind of, control in a way. That would be kind of crazy. Maybe it doesn't happen that often, but like that could be a really cool playline to play into with a deck or an ink combination that I personally have never tried. So that sounds like a really fun card. I think the card that everyone's talking about, though, Mac, is this Sapphire Moana. So maybe I'll let you speak to that one.
Yeah, I'll take it over with the Moana one. The Sapphire Moana is the 5-cost inkable 4/4 quest for 2. It's the one of the legendary sapphires. I think another one was spoiled quite a long time ago. Was it the Scrooge Sapphire card maybe a month ago? I don't remember, during the holiday season. But yeah. Either way, the ability Ancestral Legacy, you can ink cards from your discard. So I think it's a fun way of involving the discard pile with cards other than what we've seen typically in the Amber Emerald deck lists with the Circle of Life builds. They're starting to filter that into different inks, which is nice. And I know this has been a talking point with the community, is how do you get your discard more involved? And being able to ink cards that you've already used that you no longer can pull back for lack of a better explanation, but still utilize them, and kind of like the old Great Stone Dragon did in a way, right? Where you could exert that item and ink a character card in your discard, put in your inkwell exerted. This one though, it can almost act like any inkable card in your discard. It feels like it's in your hand and could be used just for inking, and in a way it's a card advantage tactic, right? You can keep your hand size healthy, ink from your discard, and then utilize your healthier hand size to then utilize what you're trying to play. Now, I wanted to point out, immediately when this was revealed, a lot of people were like, ooh, thinking back, comparing how can we use this with other cards that are currently in the game. And the biggest one is the Cinderella that was released last set, Dream Come True, because this card, Moana, is a princess. And can you use your inkwell when you trigger the Cinderella ability at the end of the turn? You can put a card from your hand into your inkwell and then draw a card. People were asking, well, can you use cards from your discards to utilize Cinderella's ability? It was further clarified through some Discord channels or Reddit channels from the Ravensburger team. You cannot use Moana's ability as part of Cinderella's ability. The biggest explanation that they had to is this Moana kind of reads like a Sail the Azurite Sea or the set 1 Belle, that is Belle Strange but Special. Right now, this Moana card simply just says you can ink cards from your discard. I think they've been changing the language in the sense of previously it was reading more so like during your turn, you may put an additional card from your hand into your inkwell face down. And then use it right away, basically inking twice, or from Sail the Azurite Sea. This turn, you may put an additional card from your inkwell in your hand face down and then draw a card. I think this Moana card reads a lot like that. So, again, you have to be able to use inkable cards for this Moana, rather than kind of like a Tipo effect or a Fishbone Quill effect or things of that nature where you can hide uninkables or utilize uninkables. But still, it's a fun way to interact with the discard. I'm still unsure whether to see play. I first thought of it in Sapphire Steel. Like you play Cinderella on turn 3. Hopefully you're ramping. And then you play this card next. Still triggering the Cinderella effect. But then kind of turns after that, you're utilizing it like the Great Stone Dragon would. Just keep ramping, filling up your inkwell, or at least not filling up your inkwell in the sense of cheating out inkwell, but more so like being able to keep your hand size healthy while utilizing inkable cards in your inkwell. So we'll see. It's hopefully there are smarter people that can think about how this card will look in other decks, and I will then commence the certified picker route and see how this will fit in my decks, if any. So we'll see where that goes. What other thoughts do you have?
Yeah, I think one thing that came to mind when I saw this card was the incredible synergy this might have with like a Sail the Azurite Sea. Like either your earlier one that you played, but imagine you play a Sail after this, right? Then you play Sail, draw a card. You can use the Sail from your discard that you just played from Moana's effect, and then ink another card from your discard or some other card from your hand. So like that's kind of amazing, is like you could really ramp using cards like that and still keep your hand size healthy. And yeah, to your point, like following Cinderella, like she is a princess, you still get to like do some hand filtering and ramping prior to the next card that you play. I think it'll get some play. It seems like a really cool card and does indeed feel a bit like Stone Dragon in a way on a body. I think two other things that we didn't talk about. So the first is that this Moana is actually one of the 2 iconics from this set. So Moana Curious Explorer is one of the iconics. It's a very cute picture of her with is his name Pua, the pig. And then the other one is of Pocahontas, the shift, the 5-cost shift. That's a shift 3. And her text states, when you play this character, if you use shift to play her and none of your characters challenged this turn, characters can't challenge until the start of your next turn. So this could definitely be a play where like you've built up maybe a wider board and you haven't been questing. You shift this, turn all your stuff sideways, and now they can't challenge any of your stuff. And all of a sudden, maybe you get 20 lore in 2 turns and they can't remove any of your stuff. That's super interesting. I think this could have some definite play in maybe some of the more aggressive lists that are trying to protect from challenges with all the, as we say, weenie characters that those lists tend to run. But if you look at the artwork on both of these, they're kind of in this like frozen tundra thing that we've started to see in the Winterspell artwork that was released a while ago. And the story, we'd be remiss not to talk a little bit about the lore here, right? The story is that this vine is growing in the world of Lorcana, and Elsa is sent in to help manage this giant growing vine, and she tries to freeze it, and basically all of Lorcana is covered in snow as a result of this, because her powers can tend to be unpredictable, right? So now it's this frozen sort of tundra of Lorcana, and us being in the northern hemisphere, it is currently very much winter, as Mac alluded to earlier. And so we very much can enjoy that, I guess, in the sense of that's the season that we are living in right now. And also, I think we're both pretty big Frozen fans, so kind of fun to see that sort of carry over into the world of Lorcana. And speaking of that, there are some very specific cards that relate to this freezing vine and the result of Elsa doing this. So one of those cards is a location, and I think it's probably worth noting here that it does feel like locations are making a bit of a comeback this set with some of these cards, specifically some of the text on the characters and the benefits that they will gain from having locations in your deck, as well as just the fact that you're just seeing locations get printed that have some interesting effects. So the location of the Frozen Vine is a 3-cost location, 4 willpower, costs 1 to move something there, and it's a 2 lore pip location, so probably wants to get answered pretty quickly. When this location is banished, if there was an exerted character here, return this card from your discard to your hand. So I could maybe see this as like a distract your opponent, and it still just goes right back to your hand when they banish it. So you could just like kind of use this as a stalling tactic, I guess, in some of these builds. Right, like you could put this in like a Ruby Amethyst Infinity list and just like play this a couple of times and then eventually just B-prep the board. I don't know. That's kind of interesting. And then as we talked about, right, like Emerald being this like in response of other colors, there is an Emerald action called Freeze the Vine. That's a 4-cost inkable. Banish all locations, draw 2 cards, then choose and discard a card. So that seems like a very direct response to the fact that locations are going to be more popular this set, or they're hoping that they will be more popular. The other card that kind of goes with this is there is a 1-cost action called Winterspell. That is a steel card. Chosen location of yours can't be challenged until the start of your next turn. Draw a card. So I mean, that's interesting. A 1-cost that replaces itself and prevents your locations from being challenged. So I guess we'll kind of see on those. But those sort of are some of the foundational, I think, cards of like this Frozen Vine, Elsa kind of freezing everything. She seems to very much be a popular character this set, with the fact that I think she is related to like 5 of the 10 cards they talked about today.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it has a perfect line to your point about locations. Elsa has a perfect line in Ruby. Wow, Ruby cards are something that have been announced, and one of those is Elsa herself. There's the 3-cost one. That is when you play this character, you pay 2 less for the next location you play this turn. On a 2/2 body, quest for 2. And then, but really it's a target for the 6-cost shift 4 shift target, 5/5, quest for 1. When you play this character and whenever you play a location, you may exert chosen character with 3 strength or less. While this character is at a location, she gains 3 questing power. So essentially a 5/5 quest for 4 if she's at a location, which just is absolutely wild. that also is in tandem with a new Ruby song, The Cold Never Bothered Me. It is an uninkable 3-cost song. Look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You may reveal a location card and put it into your hand. Put the rest in your discard. You may pay 3 less for the next location you play this turn. So to your point, Nathaniel, these Elsa cards and these Ruby, Frozen theme cards is really centered around location and location usage and cheating out locations for lower cost. So I'm really interested to see where that goes. Again, this is only day 1. This is the day of the Lorecast. I can't remember, 10 to 20 cards are known to this at this point of the 204, right? So there's still a lot to be released. So I'm assuming a lot of these themes will fill in, and much of those I would predict would include locations, especially if they're having this kind of Elsa lore, freezing this vine situation. I would imagine a lot of the cards centralize around that. So I'm interested to see how that goes. Yeah, to your previous point, they are bringing in Pocahontas as being one of the iconic. I think that was a really good shout out. The one kind of sad thing that I think we've alluded to before as our wish list for 2026, I can't help but say this, is that they did choose 2 iconic characters that really aren't a part of any franchise or have any association with each other, right? You have Moana and Pocahontas. And really only fabled, right, with the iconic Mickey and Minnie. So far now, the next 2 iconic pairings just don't match. They don't really have any association with one another in terms of what we would think as a Disney iconic duo. So whereas these iconic cards look amazing, they always do. They're beautiful. I think as we start to see the new meta shakeout, I'm sure there will be some playability with these 2 iconic cards. It's a little bit frustrating that they're not picking duo cards when they publicized this originally as these iconic cards are 2 iconic duos. We haven't seen that since Mickey and Minnie. So I'm hoping with the Wilds then coming up after this, I know I'm jumping way ahead, but when Pixar is released and we already know some themes with that, and we'll dive into it a little bit more, they're setting themselves up for the Wilds, and I hope they don't disappoint with choosing truly an iconic duo with that. One other thing of note, I actually lost my page, Nathaniel, so I'm going to have to rely on you for this one. I think we need to talk about this Emerald Donald Duck, because I think this and the Amber Action Ohana Means Family, I think, are the 2 favorite cards, or at least like could be meta-defining cards of the cards we've seen up to this point. So maybe you could provide a little description and first, and see where we can talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, it's good to see legendary cards get what would be more of like the legendary treatment, right? Like they're good cards that can like be sort of like game state altering cards, not like the Ruby Hades from Azurite Sea. That's genuinely awful. But like this card is a 4-cost 4/4 quest for 1 inkable Donald Duck Fred Honeywell, which if you've ever seen one of the, I think it's like a shorter film with like OG Mickey, and he's like working with Scrooge, and yeah, it's a cute story. My kids have seen it. They all love it. But the text here is Spirit of Giving. Whenever you use the boost ability of a character, you may put the top card of your deck under them face down. So it's like a double boost for a second boost for free. And then the other part is Well Wishes. During opponent's turns, whenever one of your other characters is banished, you may draw a card for each card that was under them. So this could have some really interesting synergies with some of the existing boost characters. You think about Cheshire Cats, being able to now boost twice in a turn, moving 4 damage. That's kind of amazing. Because the text usually says like, when a card is put under this, do the thing, right? Like do the boost effect. So that's super interesting. And actually, this is next to a really interesting card too, which is Goofy, the Ghost of Jacob Marley. And that is a boost too, When this character is banished, each opponent chooses and discards a card for each card that was under him. So this would be pretty slow, right? But like if you had Goofy and Donald online and you're like boosting up the Goofy, if they want to remove this 4/4 quest for 2 Goofy, they have to like discard cards from their hand while also giving you cards because Donald Duck is out. So that's kind of crazy. And I think just this could definitely have some pretty amazing synergies with lots of different ink combinations. But I think certainly our minds went like immediately to how this pairs with Amethyst and some of the boost characters there with Emerald Amethyst.
Yeah, it's just getting back to the using boost cards, whisper cards from the previous set, and how they then intertwine with additional boost effects with this set. I'm glad to see that they're continuing that road. Where, although my frustrations that I think people have recognized with specifically Cheshire Cat, I think this will just only amplify and could amplify those frustrations with Cheshire Cat. I realize it's in only a specific pairing in Amethyst Emerald, but if there's one thing that I'm able to theory craft, doing a double boost on the Cheshire Cat feels super insane. So I think every Amethyst Emerald deck moving forward are going to, if they run this Donald, are for sure running 4 copies of Cheshire Cat because the synergy is too good with that, in my opinion. So we'll see where it goes, but still a lot to be revealed. But yeah, I'm curious what you think about the Ohana card, because this is like Rapunzel is kind of back in an action.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting card, and we've talked about how Amethyst seems to have this hold of the meta because of the fact that it is the card draw color, and getting back card draw in other ways for other decks being important, right? The Moana is pseudo doing that for Sapphire, allowing you to ink from discard instead of having to ink one of the cards from your hand if you want to ink on your turn. Ohana Means Family is a 3-cost inkable action, another legendary again, so leaning into the fact that legendary cards should be good. Remove all damage from chosen character of yours. Draw a card for each 1 damage removed this way. So it is an action, unlike Rapunzel being on a character, so that's worth noting. But Rapunzel was limited to like the most you could get was 3, right? This could be, depending on the board state, you could draw a ton of cards with this, right? Like I picture a world where you're running a dogs list and your tramp is your big 7-cost tramp that you cheated out early is sitting in front of something, and your opponent's like, okay, I can quest in front of you. You're never going to challenge me, right? You're just going to run a race. You could forego 2 lore, have that 2/6 body challenge into like a 4 or 5 strength character, heal him, and draw 5 cards, which is just like crazy for a deck that usually burns out of cards, right? So that's super interesting. I think my mind initially went to this being a really good like aggro card in a way that like I think what we used to call in Azurite Sea era, the Diggy Diggy Hole list. I was thinking, oh hey, if this replaces Rapunzel, right? Like it's card draw for the aggressive decks that typically burn out of cards. But because it's an action and not a character, that might hurt that type of deck a little bit. But I still have to imagine a world where this, you're getting kind of close and you're just kind of burnt out on cards. You just need a few more to just be able to lay like a couple threats per turn. This could have some power there, but we'll see. I think it's super interesting. And it does create some of the like Rapunzel trap scenarios that we used to talk about, right? Like the unwillingness to like quest in front of, like a Lawrence or do something in front of a Lawrence because it could like take your thing, and then Rapunzel could come out, heal it, and then they draw 3 cards, and that would pretty much lose you the game. This could kind of create some of those instances for some of the Amber decks.
Right. I think this card, I immediately thought of 4 cards with this. The first one was kind of like the Wreck-It Ralph. You see a lot of Wreck-It Ralph Amber cards and all the Wreck-It Ralph, because he's just a giant human being, video game character in the movies. You can imagine all of those cards have a lot of willpower, so this could maybe work well with some sort of Wreck-It Ralph. The other one I thought of, and kind of very much on brand with the franchise, the Surfer Stitch. And I think what's really cool is I think this card specifically with Surfer Stitch is a perfect example of them being Ravensburger 5 to 10 sets ahead of game development of where we're at current state in the meta. Surfer Stitch, they knew was going to be reprinted in Fabled Set 9. That being said, they were most likely, if not already, they were probably printing Set 12 around that time. So like in a way, like they kind of knew that with Surfer Stitch and Ohana, Lilo and Stitch, same franchise. I think it's just really fun that this card happens to be part of the same franchise. And Surfer Stitch has 8 willpower. So you could perfectly use Surfer Stitch in that aspect. Whereas Stitch himself allows you to draw cards if you have characters on board. Then next turn you challenge with this Stitch, have a lot of damage on them, then immediately heal them and draw even more cards. So to your point about like trying to find, whereas Amethyst is just play a card, draw a card, trying to find other draw effects in other colors. This is, I think, Amber's way of doing that, is healing a character and also gaining a card draw effect while healing characters like Rapunzel used to do. To your point about the new Moana, in a way, keeping your card advantage in your hand by inking cards in your discard, so you're not quote unquote wasting cards in your hand. Kind of a card effect. So yeah, I think we're starting to see, just due to the nature of TCGs taking a long time to release sets and the meta taking a while to shift when those new sets are released. Kind of all the complaints we've been hearing over the last couple sets with Amethyst. We're starting to see those answers are shifting in a direction. We're trying to find card draw in other ways. The new Elsa, being able to cheat out spending for locations. I think that's another example. Like, it's fun to see at least different ways of card advantage being utilized in other ink combinations, or at least starting to be released with that. So it's really fun. The other 2 cards I thought of with Blue Hades. Blue Hades has a lot of willpower. I just ran Blue Hades and Stitch in my detective list. And then the other one is the Monstro. Like, that's just also a big, beefy character with a lot of willpower. So speaking of me and you running these Amber Amethyst and Amber Sapphire lists with these giant willpower characters, I think this card will fit right into these decks that we just ran just this past weekend. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see where this specific action goes, as it's a card draw mechanic in a different color that isn't Amethyst.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it, Mac, right? Like the ability to find creative card draw in other inks that still feel like it fits the theme of that ink, I think is a great thing that we're starting to see. Speaking of Amethyst, I think it's probably important that we talk about the Set Champs promo decision. This might come off as a little bit critical, overly critical, but I think we're starting to move in the right direction, but we're not like fully there yet with like, oh, they nailed it on like the champ mat and promo card selection. Like, for example, I'll talk about like Reign of Jafar, right? Like, it was Reign of Jafar was the set, and the promo card and the champion mat were a Jafar card and mat. It like made sense. It was like very overtly related. Fabled was Maleficent Dragon, which was just like an iconic card since the first chapter. It was kind of this callback to a prior, special card. It felt like it kind of made sense just because they also chose like a popular thing. And then they sort of went a little bit backwards, I think, with like, and I say a little bit because with Set 10 and Whispers, they, like, detectives were kind of like a theme. So like choosing the Sapphire Daisy detective card felt a little bit on brand, but like I don't know, I guess she didn't feel like that much of like the storyline to like that particular set. Whereas like Gargoyles were like a big franchise addition to Lorcana. Like that would have made it like a Demona mat would have been sweet, or a Demona card would have been super sweet. Or like a Goliath, too I think that just would have been really cool. And like as kind of one of the faces of the like meta relevant cards that came out, right? Like that makes sense in my brain. And this Tinkerbell decision feels a little bit kind of like the Daisy, where it's like, yes, it's like kind of in the theme, but like it also feels a little bit random. not as random as like Scar in Azurite Sea, right? Where it was like he has nothing to do with like how is this related at all? This is like closer because she's like, you know, Snowflake Collector is the flavor text. So like she's kind of there. And as far as them like choosing a meta relevant card too, I'm not entirely sure this card will really be played. And the text for those who aren't watching or can't see this, right, is Flurry of Delight. While you have 4 or more cards in your hand, this character gains evasive. And then Spectacular Find is the secondary effect, which is while you have 7 or more cards in your hand, this character gets +3 lore. So for like super crazy card draw, she gets like superpower, which I think this is kind of Fantasyland. Like 7 or more cards in your hand is kind of a huge amount by the time this would come down on turn 3 or then into turn 4. Maybe there's a world where you just spend some ink and draw a bunch of cards and then she can quest for 4. That's super cool. But she's a 3-cost inkable 3/3. I don't know. It doesn't seem like she'll get a ton of play. So again, I think we're still kind of in this like not super playable card, not totally like related to like, not totally related to the story or like a particularly iconic character. Like I shouldn't say that Tinkerbell's amazing, but like I think one of the things I thought about with like when I saw this card, and I think to the current set, right, is like Daisy Duck got a mat before like Mickey Mouse did. Because she's like in that world, right? Like that feels weird. That like Minnie or Mickey doesn't have one yet, but Daisy Duck has a championship, like mat and promo card treatment. So I think it's still cool. It looks, the artwork is beautiful. It looks like it's going to totally pop and shine. So like the actual, like I'm not critiquing the artwork selection or even the fact that like it's tangentially related. I think that they're moving the right direction, but we're not quite there yet with like having like like they nailed it with the set champs materials.
Yeah. I think now that we're on this theme of like, excitement, here, my Debbie Downer, and now I do realize we've only know 20 to 30 cards or 20-ish cards. So a lot left to be released. But based on what's been released today, I don't see those handful of cards that we saw in Whispers that are truly going to be meta-defining yet up to this point. Nothing that jumps out like, yes, this is the card. Last set we had Demona, Purple Hades, we had Goliath, we had Cinderella. you could just name it on and on and on. Like, and granted, we were coming from a state in Fabled where we were at a low power level in Fabled, and almost any card in Whispers was going to be better, right? But it's this set so far in the cards that have been released doesn't feel that way. Beside that Emerald Donald Duck we spoke to, I think could have some play here. So we'll see. I think what's interesting is these underdog keywords. I think that's fun, gaining a little bit of advantage if you're the second player. For those of you who don't know, these underdog keywords are 2-cost cards, but the text specifically reads, and again, I don't have it specifically pulled up right now, but it reads to the extent of like, if you're the second player to go, you can pay 1 less for this card. And usually these 2-cost characters have the stats of a typical 2-cost character, but then you're able to play it on turn 1 if you're the player on the draw specifically. So trying to dive into what we can resolve in what we see with the play draw disparity. So I do like that they're trying. I appreciate that. Whether or not they'll be relevant, don't know yet. But in terms of those cards that have been released and what we have seen, unless we have a lot of cool locations with this Elso combo, unless apparently they are promising a board wipe that hasn't been released yet, please let there be a board wipe, and please let it be in Ruby, because Ruby needs some love. I am just praying. The ultimate goal would be either a Be Prepared or a big Sisu empowered Symboling reprint as the board wipe. That would be fantastic. But other than that, I'm curious to see when they've hinted towards this board wipe what it's going to be. So again, a lot of cards to be revealed, but I have not been blown away yet with the cards that have been revealed up to this point. But I will gladly be wrong as the certified picker, and I start seeing people build decks that are better than me and utilizing these new cards and seeing the meta shape out. Because like we saw in almost every set, but especially Whispers, decks like Amethyst Amber pop out of nowhere within a couple weeks before set champ season and kind of just redefine the meta in and of itself. I'm sure we'll have that too in this set like we do every other set. So I'm optimistic, but I'm kind of like it doesn't hit as hard as what Whispered has or did up to this point so far. What are your thoughts though, Nathaniel, unless you can piggyback off that or this new 2-player starter kit that they announced with that as well?
Yeah, I think I just reiterate the point that like it is early, to your point, Mac, of like, they've only shown us like 20, 25 cards, so there are a lot to go. So I hope that there will be plenty of good, Cheshire Cat was a super rare that ended up being this like meta breaker, right? So I'm sure there's plenty more to come, and I'm optimistic that we'll find those in the near future. I hope there's plenty of good like commons and uncommons, like we even saw it with this set, right? Like Lexington, super powerful uncommon card, right? So for those of us who don't want to have to spend tons of money on cards, it's nice when they're lower rarity too that are relevant to play. But I think this 2-player starter kit thing is a really cool idea that they're introducing as part of Wilds Unknown. So, I think in the past we've thought about starter decks as like, okay, they're okay-ish. I tend to see a lot of them sitting on shelves at stores that I go to, whether it's a local game store or it's a bigger box retailer, just because the value just isn't really there, because you're spending an extra $10 above the singular pack that you get on what amounts to a lot of bulk and maybe a couple decent cards. So this idea, I think, is more to kind of encourage, like, you could buy this and like immediately go play. And so this 2-player starter set is really neat. It's MSRP of $29.99 in US dollars, but it's 2 full 60 card decks with 2 special foil cards each, 2 cardboard deck cases, 2 lore counters, damage tokens, and the quick start rules. So some of the similar items, I think, but the fact that there's like 2 lore counters, 2 deck boxes, 2 pre-built decks, it's like, hey, you're gonna get this as like a show someone how to play, or a thing that you could get in conjunction like with someone, go somewhere with this and play some Lorcana. That's kind of neat. We'll see if it necessarily changes anything about what we just said about the existing starter decks, but it feels like it's more oriented to like group play or like newer person introduction. You get this instead of buying 2 separate starter decks. So that's kind of neat.
That's what I thought too. Is my immediate thought was getting new players into the game. So it's kind of join with your friends. It's hard to join TCG by yourself. So joining with friends makes it that much easier to throw that fishing pole in the pond and hope your other friends too latch on. Thanks, Connor, for throwing that initial fishing pole and getting all of us involved with the game right in the very beginning of set 3 for me. So. But you alluded to, and something that I really didn't catch on, that 2-player starter kit was for set 11. So I thought it was getting introduced for this set. But no, it's Wilds Unknown. And since you kind of bridged that topic, let's talk about kind of the last big thing that they announced at the Lorecast, where what future sets are going to look like. And I think this is, for me personally, what has got me super excited for the game. And it's unfortunate that I need to wait another 3 months until May for Wilds Unknown to be released. But they started to kind of reveal what the franchises are going to look like released for the next couple sets, specifically because, to your previous point, Pixar is when it starts for set 11 in the Wilds Unknown. In the Wilds Unknown, what we know so far is that, and what we've known for a while, is that Toy Story will be introduced in this set, specifically Woody and Buzz, talking about iconic duos. It is a disservice for you not to choose the iconic duo of what am I thinking of Woody and Buzz. However, if there's one iconic duo that could replace them, it is the other Pixar franchise that they have revealed will be a part of Wilds Unknown, and that is The Incredibles. So Mr. and Mrs. Incredible, Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl, I could see that as another iconic duo that they could choose for that set. I am so excited for that. With set 11, or what is it? Set 12. I don't know what set. What's Wild?
I think Wilds Unknown is 12 because if Whispers is 10, because Fabled 9, Whispers 10, Wilds would be, or Winterspell would be 11, Wilds would be 12. Yeah.
Bad math. Mathing is hard.
It's okay. We always talk about it. We don't necessarily ever talk about it by like saying anymore like set 6, right? Like we just kind of refer to it as like Azurite Sea, or like Whispers. We don't really normally say like set 10. I guess we're starting to get up to like a high enough number now.
Yeah. But yeah, what are your thoughts on Toy Story and Incredibles for the set after this one?
Oh my gosh, it is tough. I agree, because like Winterspell is our bridge to get to that for the next 3 months.
Yeah.
So it's like it's hard not to just kind of like wish that away in a way, right? Like let's enjoy it. Let's see the fun cards. Like there's gonna be new stuff. But man, those franchises are incredible, and like shouts to the super goof mat that they're releasing. Our friend Connor's a big Goofy fan. I think he will absolutely love that. Brave is coming to Lorcana as part of Wilds Unknown. That's super cool. And then also they went a step further and even talked about like their plans for the rest of the year with other cool stuff. So like the fact that, right, Mac, like the whole rest of this year we're also going to get Monsters Inc. and Up, and then Coco in Q4. Oh my goodness. So personal story here, very short. I actually saw Coco for the first time on a Disney cruise ship. It was just like, I vividly remember like being in tears at the end of that movie, and I'm like on a cruise ship theater. It was just so cool to like experience such an iconic movie for the first time in that setting. Obviously I'm a Disney junkie if I'm going on Disney cruise ships. But like what an amazing franchise, and it's just so exciting that that's also coming to Lorcana. I think I talked a little bit about how I was nerding out a little bit about gargoyles. I was excited about that. I am like 10x as excited to see things like Toy Story and The Incredibles and Coco come to this game. It's just going to be so fun to see these characters. That Jack Jack too, shouts for the Ruby Jack Jack that's coming out, which feels so on brand. I should probably talk a little bit about like what the card is, because it's just so perfect. And this is when I think it's really fun to see them like lean into the nature of a character. I think that like they just absolutely nailed this. And this Jack Jack card that's going to come out in set 12. So yeah, Wilds Unknown. Is the effect is at the start of your turn you may put the top card of your deck into your discard. If its card type is, and then there's the first one, if it's a character, this Jack Jack gets +2 strength. If it's an action that you discarded from the top of your deck, this character gets +2 lore. If it's a location, banish chosen character. So it's like it like gets a buff, or it gets a bunch of extra lore, or it gets to become like a Dragonfire. Like, which feels so on brand for Jack Jack, right? Like he could turn into all these things and it's kind of random. Like this feels like the exact way that you could implement a character like that and like all of his craziness into a card in a TCG. I think they just completely crushed it. If we get to see more stuff like this, I will be so happy as just like a fan of these franchises, because it feels so in line with them. Whether they end up being meta relevant or not, I think you just have to love that they're like leaning into the characters and what feels true to them.
Yeah, I would go a step further and say that a lot of these upcoming franchises for the next sets coming out, there's people have talking about thematic decks and building thematic decks, not only with franchises, but with the archetypes of like allies or detectives or gargoyles. You know, these I think have presented a lot of opportunities to build such decks, like predicting Toy Story. There will probably be I know one of the Buzz cards that we know, like one of them is toy, so there will be toys now. Maybe there's some toy synergy. The Incredibles, maybe there's like a superhero synergy. Monsters Inc., Monster Synergy, like things like that and things of that nature, I think presents very fun opportunities to introduce more of those deck archetypes into the game. I'm very excited to your point about Coco. I think it's one of the most underrated cards. It's a great movie, and I think a lot of people like it, but in terms of comparing it to other Pixar movies, I still think it's underrated. It's definitely for sure in my top 10, but maybe top 5 of favorite Pixar movies of all time. So I'm very excited for Coco as well. And it's coming around the Q4, the Day of the Dead, Halloween season, which I think will be really fun as we start turning that corner with kind of just what's happening in our day-to-day lives as well. It'll be released around that same time too.
Yeah, I mean, I would make the argument that Coco, the story was great, the art stuff, like the artistic quality of everything just felt so amazing, like the colors and everything else involved with that, and the music too, just some absolute bangers on that film. So like it just feels like it kind of had it all. So I'm thrilled that that's coming to Lorcana this year, whether it be, yes, it's Q4, but hey, that's before we know it, we're going to be there. And it's just so amazing that these franchises are coming. So yeah, I know we're getting a little bit long on time here. We're long-winded, very excited about the state of and the future of this game. As we're kind of really wrapping up Whispers, which doesn't even feel like it was that long ago that we were like playing in, a sealed event at the start of the set and doing our trio thing. And it's all of a sudden, oh, hey, on to the next one. So, bittersweet, say goodbye to this, but say hello to some really fun stuff with Winterspell as we bridge the gap into Pixar. So yeah, I think for those who are not aware, Minnesota right now, as Minnesotans, both Mac and I know some people who are currently being impacted by some of the, we'll call it tumultuous events with what's happening with ICE around our state. They're kind of going around a good chunk of the state, and it's causing a lot of disruption to businesses, to some communities, some upheaval for sure. So I think, with that, I think that the broader message that I would just want to say to our listeners, right, is like, look after each other, look after your neighbors, right? Like whether whatever you stand on that type of issue, right, it doesn't necessarily impact the way that, you are a part of your community. And I think it's just look after the people that are around you. And I think really appreciate the people that are around you. And really be empathetic to those, to other people's experiences, right? We've seen people impacted very directly from this, and people also who have kind of been more indirectly impacted as well. So check in on those that you love and make sure everyone's doing okay and help where you can. It's certainly an interesting and challenging time in our state. It kind of has shades of some of the things that were happening in our state around the time that George Floyd was unfortunately everything that kind of happened with that, right? That was a very hard time, I think, for our community, our wider Minneapolis and Minnesota community especially. So I just think that the broader part that I would want to say on this is just be aware, right? Be up to date on your news, and also just like check in on the people that you know and love. It's important. I think it goes a long way into making people feel safe.
Yeah, and I would like to piggyback off that too, in the sense that the whole broad Twin Cities area has been affected by this. So just know we would feel bad without us three dads mentioning that our thoughts, we're truly thinking about our community first, along with our families, our community first and foremost. I know this podcast is here to present fun and talk about, shiny cardboard and our excitement, not only from bringing up our kind of a competitive upbringing through this TCG, as well as bringing friends together and mending that with our love for Disney, right? That's kind of what the podcast is about, and how us as dads can kind of balance our lives with this really fun hobby, right? But we have lives outside of this, and we have people we care about that are affected by this. And I'm sure we're not the only ones, especially within the Lorcana community as well, specifically within the state of Minnesota. So we thought it would be a disservice to at least not mention and know that we're thinking about you. People, be aware of it. Stay safe as you can. We'll continue to support each other, and with that, it's amazing what I have seen in our neighborhoods when we can come together on things, the power we truly have as a unit, and keep that in mind as we're trying to navigate through these crazy times within our neighborhood. So we're here for you, Lorcana community. But just wanted to send that message out that please be aware of what's going on and stay safe while you're doing it too.
Yeah, well said, Mac. Well, as always, you can find us on Instagram as well as Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We do also post our episodes with video onto YouTube. So if you want to follow along with some of the screen sharing that we did today about the fun Skull Vikings deck list, you can do that as well on that particular channel. But otherwise, Mac, great talking with you. Next week, hopefully we get Ryan back and possibly even some special guests. I guess we'll find out. Without any further ado, let's get the duck out of here.